I hit the patio stone before I understood I was falling. A cold shock of frosting smeared across my cheek and into my hair as something heavy and soft crashed over my chest. The air left my lungs in one hard burst. For a second, I could not hear anything except the ringing inside my own head. Then the sound slammed back in all at once. A woman screamed, chairs scraped, glass shattered somewhere behind me. The string quartet lurched into silence mid-note. The 5-tier wedding cake lay in pieces around me, its white layers crushed and sliding across the patio like melting snow. My legs were twisted beneath me at an angle I could not fix. My hands sank into frosting as I tried to push myself upright. Pain flashed across my lower back, bright and hot, and I froze, breath shaking in my throat. A voice I knew far too well shrieked above me. Look what she did. My $5,000 cake. She ruined it. She ruined everything. Not one word about me. Not a single question about whether I could feel my legs or whether the fall had done new damage. Only the cake. Only herself. Movement blurred at the edge of my vision. Someone rushed forward, then another person grabbed their arm and pulled them back. I heard a man shout for emergency services. The crowd pressed in, hovering and retreating at the same time, like a tide pulled by panic. Then a shadow fell over me. A warm, steady weight pressed lightly at the base of my skull, fingers spreading just enough to support my neck without lifting it. I smelled clean cologne, and something familiar I could not place, like dust mixed with desert wind. Nora, stay with me. Can you hear me? It was Logan Pierce, the groom. The man who had been smiling under the oak tree less than an hour earlier. He knelt beside me in his dark suit, the knees already stained with frosting and crushed flowers. I tried to speak, but only a thin sound came out, half breath and half panic. Do not move, he said. Just look at me. Your breathing is fast. Slow it down. You are safe. I am right here. My vision swam. I blinked hard, trying to clear frosting from my eyelashes. Logan leaned a little closer, shielding my face from the direct sun. His eyes were fixed on mine, steady and focused. The kind of look someone gives when they know staying calm is the only thing that can keep a bad moment from getting worse. Behind him, Cassidy's voice rose again. She is faking it. She always fakes it. Get up, Nora. Stop making a scene. There was a sound in Logan's chest, a short, sharp exhale. Almost a laugh, but not the kind that held humor. He turned his head just enough that she could hear him. Stop talking, Cassidy. A low ripple of shock moved through the guests. Even I felt it, dazed as I was. Then Logan looked back down at me, brows drawn tight, a crease of worry forming between them. Try to wiggle your fingers for me. Good. Okay. Keep your head still. You hit hard. Stay right where you are. He spoke with the kind of calm that came from experience, not training videos. My body recognized it before my mind did. A medic's calm. A soldier's calm. Something buried in my memory stirred. An echo of a night in Afghanistan years earlier, but the pain in my spine drowned it out before I could grab hold of it. A camera clicked nearby. Not a phone. A real camera. Caleb, the photographer, pointed it at the scene with his mouth pressed tight. Not taking pictures for the wedding album. Documenting. His voice reached Logan quietly. I have the whole thing. From the shove to the fall. I will send it to the police. Shove. The word floated through the haze. I squeezed my eyes shut, and the moment replayed behind them. Cassidy's hands gripping the back of my chair. The sudden, violent jolt. The world is tipping. My body has no way to stop the fall. It had not been an accident. More voices grew around us. Some are angry. Some were stunned. A woman near the bar kept saying, "Oh my Lord," over and over, like she could not stop. A man muttered that he had seen the whole thing, that he could not believe what the bride had done. Cassidy's sobs turned high-pitched behind Logan. She pushed herself into the center of the chaos. Logan, do not let her ruin our wedding. She is doing this on purpose. Tell them. Tell them she always does this. Google looked at her with a stillness I felt even from the ground. He said nothing, only shook his head once, the smallest movement, before turning back to me. Stay with me, Nora. You are going to be okay." His voice softened on my name, almost like he had said it before. In another time, another place, my eyelids fluttered shut again, just for a moment. "I will not lose you twice," I heard him whisper, so low I could not be sure I had heard it right. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The sound grew louder, cutting through the panic like a blade. Logan glanced over his shoulder at the crowd, then back at me. His hand stayed at the base of my skull, unmoving, steady as the ground I had fallen from. The last thing I saw before everything blurred was the look on his face. Recognition, fear, anger, and something else I could not name. Then the world tilted again, not from falling, but from memory crashing to the front of my mind. I knew that voice. I had heard it through static and dust, years earlier, when mortar fire lit up the Afghan sky and someone shouted for a medic. Me. My chest tightened so hard I thought the pain might swallow me whole. To understand why my sister's wedding day turned into a battlefield, you have to come back with me. Not to the explosion that took my legs, not to the night I thought I would die under foreign stars. But until this morning, only a few hours ago, I still believed that if I just stayed quiet enough, small enough, polite enough, my family might leave me in peace for one day. And before I take you there, let me ask something. What are you doing while listening to my story? For me, the moment this all happened, I was sitting alone under an oak tree at Low Country Oaks Estate in Savannah, trying to steady my breath and remind myself that I belonged in the world. Feel free to share your moment too. I always love knowing where you are as you join me in this journey, because this is where everything began, long before I hit the ground. It started that morning with my mom knocking on the guest room door like she was afraid of waking a stranger instead of her own daughter. "Nora, honey, time to get up. Big day, remember?" I was already awake. I had been awake since a little after 5, watching the light crawl across the ceiling fan and listening to the old house creak as the air conditioning kicked on and off. The Callahan family home sat just outside Savannah, 2 stories of white siding and black shutters, with a front porch my mom loved to decorate for every holiday. Growing up, I used to race down those stairs 2 at a time. Now I took the elevator chair fixed along the banister, a contraption they had installed, mostly so relatives would stop asking how I managed. I stared at the ceiling a second longer, then pushed my palms into the mattress and shifted my body toward the chair, parked beside the bed. Transfers were easier now than they had been that first year, but they still took thought. No quick movements, no twisting. I swung my legs with both hands, feeling nothing from the waist down, and slid into the chair with a practiced twist of my shoulders. By the time my mom knocked a second time, I was dressed in the pale blue bridesmaid-style dress my sister had insisted on for me, altered so it would fall right in the chair. The fabric pooled in my lap in a way that almost hid my thighs. "Come in," I called. The door opened and my mom stepped in with a smile already pasted on her face. Elaine Callahan never appeared in front of a mirror or another person without that smile. Today it was stretched tighter than usual. She wore a soft pink dress that matched the color scheme Cassidy had chosen for her bridesmaids. Her hair was sprayed into gentle curls that did not move when she turned her head. "You look nice," she said, roughly in the tone people use when they are checking an item off a list. She brushed her palm over the top of my hair. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little," I lied. She did not push. Her gaze dropped to my wheelchair, then darted away again like the metal offended her. The chair was matte black, light and maneuverable. The best thing the Veterans Affairs Hospital and my own savings could manage. "Remember," she said, voice softening, but not in a way that felt kind. "Today is about Cassidy. She has worked so hard for this. She is under a lot of stress. It would mean the world to me if you could do everything possible to keep things smooth." There was a time when that sentence would have felt like a request. Now it landed like an order I had heard my whole life. Blend in. Be easy. Do not make waves. I swallowed and nodded. I am just going to sit where the planner tells me and smile when it is expected. That is all. Her shoulders dropped a fraction in relief. Good girl. And remember what we talked about. No long stories about the army. People get uncomfortable, and this is not that kind of day. She said the word army in a careful way, almost like the syllables might stain the air. She usually preferred phrases like, "your time away," or "your medical situation," anything that kept the image of me in a uniform out of the room, where Cassidy's plans lived. I could still remember the day I came home from Afghanistan. I had arrived in Savannah in a wheelchair, issued by the hospital, hands raw from learning how to move myself, a discharge file thick with medical terms and diagrams I did not want to study. Cassidy had been out of state for a merchandising job, so it had just been my mom and dad waiting at the arrivals curb. I had rolled through the automatic doors and into the Georgia humidity, wearing the same tan uniform I'd left in, the pant legs folded neatly over limbs that no longer worked. People walking past had glanced over, that quick mix of pity and curiosity. My dad had given a small, awkward wave. My mom had burst into tears, the loud, messy kind that drew more attention. She hugged me without asking and whispered into my hair that we needed to get me into the car quickly before too many people saw. "Do not let the neighbors see you like this," she had said later in the driveway. "They will not know what to say. It will just make everyone uncomfortable." That has been the theme ever since. We never talked about how I had been a medic, how my job in Afghanistan had been to run toward broken bodies, not away from them. We never talked about the night everything went wrong, the blast and the screaming and the blood. When cousins came for Thanksgiving and asked what it had been like, my mom would jump in before I could answer and say things like, "Nora does not like to dwell on that. Let us talk about Cassidy's new project instead." My dad rarely contradicted her. Frank Callahan was the kind of man who liked his recliner, his routines, and his quiet. He went to work at the insurance office, came home, watched sports, and paid the bills. If there was a storm in the house, he slipped into the hallway and waited for it to pass. When my mom brushed me aside to keep Cassidy comfortable, he would look at me with something like an apology in his eyes. But the words never made it to his mouth. Now, in the guest room, I watched my mom straighten a non-existent wrinkle in the front of her dress. "The planner is picking us up at 9:30, she said. "We need to be at Low Country Oaks by 10 for hair and makeup. Cassidy wants some behind-the-scenes photos. She said she is counting on you to be on your best behavior." My best behavior? I did not ask what that meant anymore. I knew. No flinching if a door slammed too hard. No zoning out when the noise got thick. No snapping if someone asked casually what it was like to be stuck in that thing. And definitely not mentioning that I had once dragged a bleeding lieutenant behind a broken wall while rounds kicked up dirt a few feet from my helmet. I looked down at my hands. The faint scars across my knuckles had faded but not disappeared. There was a thin white line along my left forearm from where shrapnel had skidded instead of embedding. The big damage sat hidden under my skin where no one at the wedding would see. "I will be fine," I said quietly. "Just tell me where you want me to sit and I will stay there." She nodded as if that solved everything. "Good. Cassidy needs this day to go right. After everything. After everything." She meant after the accident that had taken my mobility and my independence, and half my sense of self. She meant after the tension that had settled between my sister and me when my injury got in the way of how she wanted to present our family. She meant after the whispers in the extended family group chat that maybe my situation was not as permanent as I made it sound. She did not mean after the long nights when I woke up choking on the smell of smoke that was not there, or after the day I almost rolled myself into traffic, because the weight of being watched and judged felt heavier than my own bones. She did not know about those moments, because I had learned not to tell her. By 8:30, I was downstairs in the kitchen, a coffee cup cradled between both hands, watching my dad butter toast like it was any other Saturday. The television on the counter murmured about the weather. Highs in the 80s, slight chance of showers in the late afternoon. "Perfect wedding forecast," the anchor said cheerfully. My dad glanced up briefly as I rolled in. "Morning, kiddo," he said. "Big day." I gave a small smile. "That is what they tell me." He hesitated, then added, "You look nice. Cassidy will be happy you made the effort." That was his way of approving my dress, my hair smoothed into loose waves by my own hands instead of a stylist. I took it for what it was. A small offering. "Are you nervous?" he asked after a moment. I shrugged, the movement tight. "There are a lot these days, but I will handle it." He nodded and slathered more butter onto his toast, like he did not know what to do with any feeling bigger than mild concern. He ate standing at the counter instead of sitting at the table. My mom bustled in and out of the kitchen, gathering last-minute things. Extra pins, lipstick, a lace wrap in case the ceremony got breezy. She kissed my dad on the cheek as she passed, then checked her phone for the time. "The car will be here in 10 minutes, she said. "Nora, you ready?" "As ready as I am going to be," I answered. The ride to Low Country Oaks estate took just under 40 minutes. I watched the trees blur past the window and tried to keep my breathing even. Each bump in the road sent a small tremor up my spine. My mom sat beside me, scrolling through her phone, occasionally murmuring comments about how many people had liked Cassidy's latest bridal shower photos. She turned the screen toward me once, showing a shot of Cassidy in a white dress at a winery, surrounded by friends, head thrown back in laughter. "Isn't she glowing?" my mom said, pride thick in her voice. "She looks happy," I said, because it was true, and because anything more complicated would only lead to trouble. My own phone buzzed in my lap. A notification from an old army friend popped up. "Good luck surviving the wedding," the message read. "If anyone gives you crap, remember you have more courage in your left thumbnail than they have in their whole body." I smiled to myself and tucked the phone away. It was comforting to know there were people who had seen the worst of me and still believed I was something strong. As we turned down the long, oak-lined drive to the estate, my stomach tightened. The trees arched over the road, forming a green tunnel that opened onto manicured lawns and a large white house with wide porches. Guests' cars already lined the gravel parking area. The sight of all that white and green and polished made me feel like a smudge on a clean page. The planner met us at the drop-off point, headset in place, clipboard in hand, smile glossy and efficient. "You must be Nora," she said, looking at me but mostly at the chair. "We have a ramp on the side of the house and a spot for you on the lawn with a good view. We will make sure you are comfortable." Her tone was professional, not pitying. It helped. I nodded and thanked her, then followed the direction she pointed. Inside the house, hair and makeup happened in a flurry of curling irons and hairspray clouds. Cassidy held court in the middle of it all. White robe tied loosely at the waist, champagne glass balanced in one hand. She hugged relatives at the door, adjusted earrings on bridesmaids, and directed the playlist. I stayed near the window, letting a stylist smooth a bit of shine off my forehead. "Stay out of the way." When Cassidy finally looked my way, her eyes skimmed over my hair, my dress, my chair. "You cleaned up decently," she said with a quick smile. "Thanks for not going all military on me. No uniforms here." Her friends laughed like she had made a charming joke. I just forced my mouth into something that might pass for a smile and let it slide. The word uniform snagged on a memory in my chest, but I pushed it back down. By the time we moved outside for pre-ceremony photos, the sun had climbed higher. The lawn glittered with glassware and silver. White chairs lined up in even rows. The cake, already in place on a low patio table near the dance floor, stood like a sculpture. 5 layers of white icing and sugar flowers. I saw it only for a second, as the planner led me to a spot beneath an oak, a tree not far from the main seating area. "This will be your view," she said. "You will have shade, and we can easily roll you forward if we need to for any photos. Out of the way, but still included." Out of the way. As they walked back toward the bridal party, I settled my hands on the wheel rims and looked out over the small sea of white chairs. People were beginning to gather already, clustering at the bar, examining the flower arrangements, and taking pictures of themselves in front of the fountain. I took a slow breath and told myself the same thing I had repeated on the flight home from the war, on the first day of physical therapy, on the nights when the nightmares blurred past and future together. Blend in if you can. Breathe through it if you cannot. For Cassidy, this was the biggest performance of her life. For me, it was one more mission. Sit quietly. Smile when spoken to. Do not let anyone see you fall apart. I did not know yet that no matter how small I tried to make myself, I would still end the day sprawled on the ground in the center of it all, every secret we had tried to keep leaking out like frosting onto the stone. My hands rested on the rims of my wheels. Steady in appearance, but tight enough that my palms ached. People kept drifting past my spot under the oak tree, their voices soft at first, then sharper as the crowd thickened. The scent of cut grass mixed with perfume and champagne. The whole lawn shimmered with that bright, pre-ceremony excitement everyone feels when the show is about to start. I stayed right where the planner had placed me, exactly the way my mom said would make things easiest. Out of the way, but still included. It was a phrase that settled across my shoulders like a thin, invisible weight. A cluster of guests paused near the cocktail table, their voices carrying easily in the warm savanna air. I was not even trying to listen, but sometimes the world delivers what it wants you to hear. "She looks fine to me." I froze. Another voice picked up smoothly, the kind of tone people use when they think they sound informed. Cassidy said the injury is not permanent, that she leans into the chair because people feel bad for her. I mean, who wants a sad story at a wedding? A tiny pulse of heat pressed behind my ribs. I looked at the roses in the centerpiece beside me, their petals opening slowly in the shade. My breath tightened. For a moment, I tasted Afghan dust, dry and metallic. It startled me enough that I blinked hard and pressed my shoulder blades against the oak trunk to ground myself. A woman in a coral dress joined them. I could see her reflection in a nearby silver drink bucket, hair glossy, earrings swinging as she leaned in. Cass says she has to manage her sister constantly. It is draining. Some people are just heavy to have around. The words struck like little stones thrown from far away, not big enough to injure, but enough to bruise. I forced my breath through a slow 4 count. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. I could almost hear my old medic captain in my ear, steady and calm, telling me to anchor myself in the moment. Chairs clattering in the distance, a child giggling, the faint hum of a generator near the catering tent. Real sounds, not memories. I tried to focus on the fountain at the far end of the lawn, water catching the sunlight like tiny shards of glass. People were taking selfies in front of it, couples arranging themselves just so, waiting for the perfect angle. Then, across the grass, I saw Logan. He was talking to a group of Cassidy's college friends, tall among them, shoulders squared, the kind of stance you cannot shake, even years after combat. One foot slightly back, ready to pivot. He laughed politely at something one of the men said, and then, almost absent-mindedly, glanced toward the oak tree. His eyes landed on me. Not by accident. Not the flick of curiosity people give when something moves. His gaze stayed, level and assessing, the way soldiers look when they are checking for signals, for tremors, for the tilt of a head that might mean pain. I held still, chest tight. He looked away briefly when someone tugged his sleeve, then looked right back, longer this time. Something in his expression changed, soft at the edges, troubled in the center. I knew that look. I had worn it myself beside too many cots holding too many young soldiers who tried to pretend their limbs did not shake. Before he could move in my direction, someone nearby said my name, quietly at first, then louder. Callahan. Always the dramatic one. It came from an aunt on my mom's side, her voice pitched in that half-whisper people think is subtle. She stood near the bar in a floral dress, glass of Prosecco in hand. Another woman leaned into her. Cassidy told Carol she could walk if she really wanted to. That it is all mental. Honestly, I think she likes the attention. My jaw tightened enough that a little pulse throbbed in front of my ear. I shifted an inch in my chair, trying to ease the pressure in my spine. The movement sent a tremor through my arms that I hoped no one noticed. Someone else chimed in, voice coated with concern that rang false. Bless her heart, but she brings the energy down. Cassidy has such a bright spirit. It must be hard for her. Hard for her. The words rang like a bell in my skull. I closed my eyes for a moment and tried to picture something steady. The old wooden fence behind our childhood home. The way the light fell in Afghanistan at dusk, warm and dusty. A steady heartbeat beneath my palms as I held pressure on a wound. Anything but the present moment. When I opened my eyes again, the sunlight had shifted, landing squarely on the 5-tier cake at the edge of the patio. A towering sculpture of white icing and sugar flowers. People were gathered near it taking photos, their voices rising and falling like waves. That was when I heard heels clicking briskly behind me. My mom appeared at my side, smiling for anyone who might be watching. "Nora, sweetheart, she murmured without really looking at me, remembering what we talked about. People are curious. Sitting here alone draws questions. Cassidy is already anxious. Please do not make this harder for her. Her hand touched my shoulder, light but firm. I felt 16 again, being steered away from anything that might upset my older sister's view of herself. I am staying right where the planner put me, I said softly. I am not doing anything wrong. Her eyes flicked to my chair again, quick and tight. Just keep the mood light. That is all. She touched my shoulder once more and drifted away before I could respond. Not long after, the air shifted again. A hush rippled through the lawn as Cassidy herself approached for pre-ceremony. Photos, dress catching the sunlight like she had been dipped in it. Bridesmaids floated behind her in shades of blush and champagne. I stayed in the shade and watched her tilt her chin to the photographer, adjusting her veil with a perfect, practiced flick of her wrist. Marcy, the tall bridesmaid with the sleek hair and the rhinestone phone case, hung a half step behind her. She pushed a curl back from her cheek, angling her phone in a way that made my stomach sink. She was recording me. Not openly, not obviously, but the lens pointed to where I sat under the oak, my face tight, my hands tense, my body angled like someone bracing for weather no one else could feel. Her smile was thin and gleaming, almost excited. I stared back at her for a second too long, and that was when I saw it, the tiny flick of satisfaction in her eyes, like she had found exactly the footage she came for. Somewhere across the lawn, a glass shattered. A burst of laughter bubbled up near the bar. The string quartet shifted into another song. Everything moved. Everything shimmered. And Logan, now free of the group he had been speaking to, took a step in my direction. Then another. His gaze stayed fixed, curiosity sharpening into concern sharpening into something heavier. My pulse picked up. I could feel each beat in my throat. By the time he was halfway across the grass, Cassidy swooped into his path with a bright smile and a hand around his arm, turning him back toward the photographer with a practiced spin. He let her pull him, but his eyes drifted back to me once more, a crease deepening between his brows. Something had shifted, something in him. Something in me, and somewhere between the glances and the whispers and the unblinking lens of Marcy's phone. I felt the first crack in the day's fragile surface, thin as a hairline fracture, but already beginning to spread. I took one long breath in, shaky but steady enough, and rested my palms on the rims of my wheels again. The wind changed, and I could feel, with a clarity that chilled me to the bone, that the quiet before the break was nearly over. The quiet before the break was nearly over, and my body knew it, before my mind did. A warm gust slid through the oak branches overhead, lifting the edge of the linen on the cocktail tables and sending a few roses, petals skittering across the grass. The string quartet shifted into another song, something light and bouncy that did not match the tight pull inside my chest. Across the lawn, the planner clapped her hands and called for the bridal party to gather near the arch. People began to move in that direction, little currents of pastel dresses and dark suits flowing around the center aisle. I was just adjusting the angle of my chair so I could see the ceremony space better when I caught a flash of white at the edge of my vision. Cassidy. She was walking faster than you would expect someone in that much lace to move. Bouquet in one hand, flute of champagne in the other. Her face was turned toward a cousin she was laughing with, but her steps curved directly toward me, not away. I recognized that angle. I had seen it when we were children, on the edge of a pool, or in crowded hallways at school. The purposeful drift that looked accidental until you realized every bump landed exactly where she wanted. I turned my wheels slightly to give her room. It did not matter. Her hip brushed the handle of my chair just hard enough to jolt it. The world wobbled. The champagne in her glass tipped forward and arced out, a glittering splash that landed across my skirt and the side of my chair like a golden stain. Cold liquid soaked into the pale blue fabric. I sucked in a breath, more from surprise than anything else, my hand flying to my lap as if I could scoop it back into the glass. Cassidy gasped dramatically. The sound pitched just right, so several guests turned toward us. "Oh my gosh," she said loudly, though she kept her eyes on the cousin rather than me. Nora, you really should watch where you park that thing. You almost knocked the glass right out of my hand. There it was, the twist. In one smooth breath, she had turned her deliberate hit into my carelessness. Her cousin tittered nervously and looked at me with that mix of pity and disapproval I had come to recognize. A few people nearby murmured, shifting their weight, glancing between my chair and the damp fabric of my dress. I felt heat climb up my neck. Every instinct I had from days on base told me to keep my voice calm, to de-escalate. My wheels did not move, I said quietly, more to myself than anyone else. Cassidy's gaze snapped to me then, the bright, bridal smile glued to her face for the crowd, but her eyes sharp and cold. Accidents happen, little sister, she said in that sing-song voice she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. Try not to sit so close to the traffic paths, okay? We do not want you getting bumped again. She lifted her glass in a fake toast and glided off toward the arch, leaving a trail of floral perfume and tension behind her. Behind me, I heard a small, delighted sound. I turned my head just enough to see Marcy standing a few yards away, phone in hand. The screen faced me. The tiny red recording dot glowed. She pretended to swipe through filters, but the lens was locked on my lap, on the wet patch spreading across my dress, on my face as I tried to swallow the sting of humiliation. I could almost hear the future caption. When the wheelchair becomes a problem. Or maybe do not park in the middle of everything. My fingers dug into the rubber of the wheel rims. I wanted to roll away, to find another patch of shade where her phone could not follow. Instead, I forced my hands to relax. Moving abruptly would only make me look more flustered. They would twist that, too. Across the lawn, Logan had just stepped away from a conversation with one of his uncles when he heard Cassidy's little scene. His eyes followed the last of her laughter, and then tracked backward, landing on me, on the champagne soaking into my skirt. On the phone, Marcy held a little too steadily for it to be casual. His mouth compressed into a thin line. He changed direction. I watched him start in my direction again. Long, easy strides, eating up the distance between us. Expression focused, when a cluster of Cassidy's friends intercepted him near the bar. They were all bright lipstick and dangling earrings, their voices animated as they called his name. Logan, one of them said, we have to get a picture with you before things get too crazy. Come on, just one shot. He paused, politeness winning the first round, and let them pull him toward the high tops near the cocktail station. As they lined up for the photo, another conversation drifted from just behind him. This one came with the low edge of gossip, sharpened for effect. I feel bad for Cassidy, a woman in a short navy dress said. Imagine planning your dream day and having to work around all that. She let the word all drag out, as if my entire existence were a smudge that needed correcting. Her friend in coral, the same one from earlier, snorted softly. Cassidy told me that half of this chair thing is emotional anyway. The doctor said she has to push herself harder, but she prefers sympathy. Some people just love to live in their trauma. Logan's shoulders stiffened almost imperceptibly. The photographer counted down for the shot. He smiled on cue, but his eyes were no longer on the camera. He was listening. Another voice joined in, the woman in navy lowering hers like she was confiding a secret. Remember when the local paper wanted to do that small feature on Cassidy's event planning? And it turned into a piece about how brave Nora is. I would have lost my mind. I do not blame her for being frustrated. The coral dress laughed. Exactly. It is always poor, wounded Nora. People forget that Cassidy is the one actually doing something with her life. The flash went off. The photographer said they looked great. Logan barely moved. He set his glass on the bar with a soft click, turned his head slightly toward the group behind him, and said nothing. But his jaw flexed, once, a small tell. In another life, someone might have mistaken that for tension before a firefight. He stepped away from the photo cluster, clearly intending to walk my way. He made it 3 steps before Cassidy swooped in like a bird spotting movement from above. There you are, she sang out, looping her arm through his. The planner needs us by the arch in 2 minutes. You promised you would not wander off. He glanced past her shoulder, eyes cutting in my direction, where I sat damp and stiff in the shade. I was just heading over, he said. I want to check on a couple of guests first. Nora looks like she might need a napkin or something." His voice was mild, but the implication hung there. Cassidy's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "She is fine," she said lightly. "She is used to making a mess. It gets her attention." "Please, Logan, focus. I need you present, not running around after her drama." He studied her face for a beat, as if weighing those words, then said nothing, and let her lead him a few steps. She took that as agreement and leaned closer, dropping her voice so only he was meant to hear. "You do not understand," she said. She could stand up if she wanted to. The doctors told her it is mostly in her head, but she clings to this role because people feel sorry for her. She has been like this since we were kids. Everything always has to come back to her. Logan stopped walking. He did not yank his arm out of her grip or raise his voice. He simply stopped, right there between the arch and the bar, the noise of the wedding muffled around them. "That is not how spinal injuries work," he said quietly. Cassidy blinked. "What are you talking about?" He held her gaze. People do not choose paralysis. They do not decide to stay in a chair because it is convenient. That is not how any of this works. She gave a short, breathy laugh, like he was being ridiculous. "You do not know her like I do," she said. "She is always dramatic. Always has been. Honestly, Logan, you are too kind sometimes. You fall for it." He did not reply. His eyes flicked past her to where I sat. I could feel his stare like a hand on my shoulder, even from across the lawn. While they were tangled in that quiet standoff, Marcy shifted closer to my oak tree. She pretended to be fixing the strap of her shoe, but her phone was angled again to catch my profile. The champagne stain, the tightness around my eyes. She murmured something under her breath, probably a note for whatever story she planned to tell later. The breeze carried only a few words my way. "Poor thing. So tragic." The exact opposite of what her expression said. I thought about asking her directly if she was recording me, asking her to stop. But I knew how that would play out. She would widen her eyes and insist she was just checking her makeup. Someone would murmur that I was being sensitive, that I was making things about myself. So I sat still. I let the camera drink in my discomfort. And somewhere inside, a new kind of anger slid into place. Cool and clear. On the patio, staff began adjusting the position of the cake table, wheeling it a few feet closer to the edge of the dance floor so the photographer could get better angles later. The 5-layer creation towered there, perfect and oblivious, sugar flowers catching tiny particles of light. Cassidy finally tugged Logan the rest of the way toward the arch, but I saw his free hand curl briefly into a fist before he forced it to relax. His eyes met mine once more over the tops of the white chairs, and in that brief connection I saw confusion, doubt, and the early shape of something that looked suspiciously like resolve. The planner raised her clipboard again and called for the immediate family to gather near the front for photos before the ceremony began. Chairs scraped. People shuffled. The quartet changed songs, and under the oak tree, with champagne drying on my skirt and the awareness of being watched, tightening like a band around my chest, I felt the invisible wire inside this day pull tighter, stretching toward a breaking point I could not yet see, but could absolutely feel. It was supposed to be a simple thing. Show up for my sister's wedding. Smile politely. Blend in. Do not draw attention. My mom had said it 3 times the night before on the phone, her voice careful. "Nora, honey, just try not to be the focus. Cassidy needs this day to go smoothly. I had promised. I always promised." So I wore the soft blush dress she picked, kept my hair pinned back, and positioned my wheelchair under the shade to stay out of the way. I watched guests in pastel clothes drift by, laughing, hugging, clinking glasses. Every sound seemed magnified. The shuffle of shoes, the string quartet warming up, a champagne cork popping near the bar. My body logged each one as a potential startle, the old reflexes impossible to shut off. Cassidy looked beautiful. I could admit that. Lace, tulle, sunlight catching in her curls, the picture-perfect bride. My mother hovered around her like a proud curator, showing off a masterpiece. My dad stood stiffly beside them, looking like he belonged more at a golf course than a wedding. I stayed back, fingers resting gently on my wheel rims, trying to ignore the whispers that occasionally drifted close enough to hear. She looks fine to me. Maybe the paralysis is not permanent. I heard she only uses the chair when it is convenient. Each comment sank into me like a pebble tossed into deep water. I tried to focus on the fountain near the edge of the lawn, on the breeze stirring the flowers, on the vows that would be said later, but the knot behind my ribs tightened with each passing minute. A woman in a coral dress passed close behind me. She whispered to her friend, "Cassidy is such a saint for even inviting her. I mean, her energy is so heavy." My breath stuttered and I counted silently. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6, over and over, until the buzzing under my skin eased. I was so focused on staying steady that I did not realize Logan Pierce was watching me from across the lawn. He stood near the arch where the ceremony would take place, shoulders squared, the way veterans stand when they are assessing a situation. I recognized the habit immediately. I had spent years around men and women who carried themselves that way, always scanning, always listening, always aware. When his eyes passed over me, I felt it. No pity, not an annoyance, something like recognition. He turned to speak to a relative, but glanced back at me twice more. I looked away quickly, not wanting to meet his curiosity. I did not have the strength for another explanation about why I was in the chair or how I got hurt. People always wanted details they did not deserve to know. A sudden call from the planner snapped through the air. "Immediate family to the arch, please. We are starting photos." My heart gave a little jump. The hopeful kind, the kind that wished for just a moment of belonging. I rolled a bit forward, careful on the grass, but my mom intercepted me halfway. She kept her voice low, a smile glued to her face. "Honey, stay here on the side. The ground is uneven near the arch. We do not want you tipping in the middle of photos." I glanced at the perfectly smooth stretch of lawn behind her. Nothing uneven at all. "I thought I was supposed to be in the family pictures," I said. She touched my shoulder gently, the way you touch something fragile. "The composition is tricky. The photographer needs symmetry. We will take a special picture of you and Cassidy later. It will be lovely." My throat tightened. A special picture. Separate. Not included. I nodded, because fighting it would only make things worse. She guided my chair back toward a planter overflowing with greenery, a strategic spot. Close enough to claim they had not excluded me. Far enough that my wheels would not accidentally roll into the frame. While the photographer snapped the parent photos, Cassidy glanced toward me. Her smile flickered before she masked it, the way someone hides irritation behind perfect etiquette. The photographer called for siblings, and my pulse jumped. I moved forward an inch before Cassidy appeared in front of me. "What are you doing?" she said with a brightness that did not touch her eyes. "They called siblings," I answered. Her lips tightened. "Nora, use your head. You know the picture will look strange. We will get one with you later. You sitting there among everyone could throw off the balance." Balance, symmetry, composition, words people use when they want to hide what they actually mean. Her voice dropped, the sweetness scraped off. "Do not make this difficult." I froze. That old familiar feeling washed over me, the one where I was 15 again, told to stay inside during her birthday photos so I would not ruin the aesthetic. Before I could say anything, the photographer announced they were moving to shots near the cake. The crowd followed in a loose cluster. I stayed behind the planter, my hands clammy on the wheels, heart beating too fast. The cake had been set on the patio, a towering 5-tier showpiece decorated with sugar flowers and pale ribbon. I watched from the shade as Cassidy and Logan posed beside it. She laughed, tossed her bouquet. Bridesmaids fussed with her veil. Guests clapped. Someone shouted for a group photo. Then Cassidy's eyes slid toward me again. It was tiny, that shift in her expression. But I saw it. Annoyance sharpening into something else. Something focused. Determined. She whispered to the photographer, then walked directly toward me, veil drifting, bouquet still in her hand. Jaw clenched just enough to change the shape of her face. She stopped in front of me and leaned in. "Nora, you are sitting here like a cloud over the whole day. People are talking. You are making them uncomfortable. I blinked. Shock rolled through me, slow and cold. I am just sitting where you told me to sit. Her voice sharpened. You always play the victim, even now. I asked you for one thing. Do not take attention. And here you are. Do you enjoy ruining things for me? My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Something inside me folded up on itself. She straightened and raised her voice so the guests nearby could hear. Get out of my wedding. The words sliced clean through the warm air. People fell silent. Heads turned. Glasses paused halfway to lips. My breath stilled in my chest. Stop embarrassing me, she said louder. You pity-seeking paralysis fake. My ears rang. Fake. Paralysis fake. The humiliation hit with such force, I felt myself sway without moving. Logan took 2 steps toward us, his face stark with disbelief. But I did not look at him. I looked at my sister, the girl I had grown up chasing across backyards, the woman I had comforted through breakups, the person I had tried so hard to show up for today. Cass, I whispered. Please stop. She moved behind my chair so quickly I barely registered the motion. If you will not leave, then I will help you. Her hands clamped onto the handles. Before I could brace myself, she shoved hard. The back wheels jerked over the slight patio lip. My chair twisted. My body lurched forward. The world tilted into a blur of white frosting and sunlight. I hit the cake table with my hip. Pain shot up my side. The cake stand wobbled and toppled. The entire 5-tier creation pitched forward like a collapsing tower and crashed into me, heavy and cold. Weather cream smeared across my face, my hair, my dress. Then I hit the patio. A wet thud. A crack of crystal shattering. A gasp rippled through the crowd. The breath flew out of my lungs. My legs twisted uselessly under me. My shoulder flared with pain. I could not lift myself. Frosting blurred my vision. Everything smelled like sugar and panic. She ruined my cake, I heard Cassidy shriek. She did this on purpose. Are you okay? Now I am sorry. Only the cake. Voices swelled and blurred. Call emergency services. Do not move her. Oh my God. Then a familiar voice cut through everything. Get back. Give her space. Logan dropped to his knees beside me, his tuxedo smearing in the frosting. His hands moved with practiced steadiness, supporting the base of my skull, checking my breathing, anchoring me so I would not twist further. Nora, stay with me, he said, voice urgent but steady. Look at me. I tried to breathe. I tried to speak. Pain crawled down my spine in hot lines. She fell on purpose, Cassidy cried somewhere behind him. She always does this. Logan's jaw tightened. He looked up briefly, eyes dark with fury. I saw what happened, he said, his voice carrying enough weight that several guests flinched. You pushed her. Do not lie. Gasps rippled. Someone whispered that the groom had snapped at the bride. Someone else lifted their phone again. The sirens were faint at first, then grew louder. Logan looked back down at me, his hand still steady at my neck. I cannot marry someone who would do this to a fellow veteran, he said softly, but the entire patio heard him. Cassidy swayed, grabbing the edge of a chair. Guests stepped away from her like she was something hot enough to burn. Caleb, the photographer, stood at the edge of the patio, camera lowered, his face pale. I have the entire thing recorded, he said quietly. I lay there in the ruins of the cake, every nerve buzzing, every breath shaky, and realized that no matter how badly I had feared this day might go, I had not come close to imagining how completely my world would crack open before sunset, and how nothing was ever going to be the same again. The next few minutes dissolved into sirens and ceiling tiles. They strapped me to a backboard, fitted a hard collar around my neck, and lifted me onto the stretcher. I could feel every bump of the patio stones under the wheels as the paramedics rushed me toward the driveway. Buttercream and crushed flowers smeared across my dress, sticky against my skin. Someone draped a thin blanket over me that did nothing to stop the shaking in my muscles. Logan walked alongside the stretcher, one hand on the rail near my shoulder, talking in that steady, practiced tone I recognized from the field. "Nora, they are taking you to Chatham County Memorial," he said. "You are going to get imaging on your neck and back. Just keep breathing." I focused on his voice, not the cluster of guests parting around us, not the half-heard sentences about the bride, not the fact that somewhere behind us, Cassidy was still crying about her ruined cake. The bright Savannah sky flashed in pieces above me, between the tree branches and the porch roof, and finally, the ambulance doors. Inside, the world shrank to white walls and beeping monitors. A medic clipped a pulse ox to my finger. Another started an IV. The collar dug into my jaw. I stared at the metal ribs on the ceiling, forcing my breaths to stay slow. "You are doing great, ma'am," the paramedic said. "Pain level 7, I managed, even though it felt like more. Old habit. Undersell it. Logan sat on the bench seat along the side, knees braced, watching me with that same intense focus from the patio. As the ambulance lurched forward, his gaze shifted over my face, my shoulders, the angle of my legs strapped down on the board. Somewhere in the movement, his expression changed. I know my mind was too foggy to untangle that. I shut my eyes against the sway of the vehicle and let the siren's wail pull me under. The hospital's fluorescent lights were harsher than the wedding sun. They rolled me straight from the ambulance into the emergency department, a blur of blue scrubs and clipped instructions. Paralysis history, fall from chair, direct impact to neck and spine, cake, someone added, and a few people huffed out a quick, disbelieving breath. They slid me onto the imaging table, moved my chair out of sight. The cold of the CT machine seeped through the thin blanket. I lay absolutely still while it hummed and clicked around my head and torso. Every second felt like a held breath. When they wheeled me back to a curtained bay, I saw Logan again, leaning against the wall just outside. Jacket off now, shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms. He should have looked like a groom who had just walked out on his wedding. He looked like a man back on duty. A woman in her late 50s stepped into view. Short gray curls, kind eyes, name badge clipped to her blazer. She wore civilian clothes, not scrubs, but the nurses nodded at her with a familiar respect. "Nora Callahan," she said, coming closer to my bed. "Still with us." I blinked, trying to place her. Her voice tugged at something in my memory. She smiled, small and real. "We met 2 years ago," she said. "Group therapy at the VA center. I'm Ruth Alderman." It snapped into place. The circle of chairs, the stale coffee, her calm voice talking about post-traumatic stress and moral injury like they were not dirty secrets. "Dr. Ruth," I said, my throat thickening with relief. She nodded once. "The ER attending asked me to consult since you are already in our system," she said. "They are rushing your scans, but the initial reads look like you have some nasty soft tissue trauma and possibly a mild concussion. No obvious new spinal fracture. That is the good news." My eyes stung. "So I am not more broken than I already was," I said. My attempted humor came out lopsided. She gave me a look that said she heard the joke and the pain behind it. "You are not broken," she said. "You are injured and recovering, and I am very interested in hearing how you ended up on the patio under a wedding cake." My stomach clenched. "My sister shoved my chair," I said. I was locked in. I could not catch myself. Dr. Ruth's jaw tightened just a fraction. "Logan told us some of what happened," she said, "and the police will want your statement when you are up to it. For now, I want you to focus on your body. Can you feel your hands?" I flexed my fingers. Yes. Shoulders, I shifted carefully. Pain, but movement. Yes. Legs. Nothing. Just the familiar blank space where feelings should be. I shook my head. "Same as before," I said. She nodded, satisfaction visible in the small lines around her mouth. "That is stable then," she said. "We will keep you for observation overnight. I would like to stay involved, if that is all right with you." A wave of gratitude swept through me so strong I almost cried. "Please," I said. She patted the rail of the bed. "I will check back after the neurosurgeon signs off on your scans," she said. "There is also a JAG officer on his way, since this is an assault involving a veteran. You are not alone in this, Nora." Her words sank deep. Not alone. It felt almost foreign. After she left, Logan stepped inside the curtain, stopping just short of my bed, as if he did not want to crowd me. "How much of that did you hear?" I asked. "Enough," he said, "and enough earlier to know you tried to downplay your pain." "It is a habit," I said. "Medics lie. Part of the job." He hesitated, then pulled the small visitor chair closer and sat down, forearms resting on his knees. "About that," he said, "being a medic." I frowned. "What about it?" His gaze searched my face. "You were not just any medic," he said slowly. "You were in Kandahar at 2018. Second deployment, Forward Operating Base, Bristol." The air in my lungs turned to glass. "How do you know that?" I whispered. "Because I was the idiot staff sergeant who stepped on the wrong patch of dirt. Outside the north gate," he said. "You were the one who kept pressure on the wound in my thigh while the mortar rounds were still hitting the field. You refused to duck until they dragged us both behind the barrier." Memory crashed over me. Dust, blood, the metallic taste in my mouth from adrenaline and fear. My hands pressed into his leg, shouting at him to stay awake, while the sky lit up electric white. I stared at him, seeing that man under the soot and sand layered over the version in front of me in a crisp white shirt, frosting still staining his cuffs. "I did not recognize you," I said, ashamed and overwhelmed. "I am sorry." He shook his head. "You had other things on your mind," he said. And I am sure I looked a lot worse back then. Despite everything, I huffed out a small, shaky laugh. "You yelled at me for not getting lower," I said. "You yelled back that if you let go, I would bleed out on your boots," he replied. For a moment, the hospital curtain might as well have been canvas. The beep of the monitor folded into the remembered thump of rotor blades. The connection between us, forged years ago in dirt and chaos, snapped taut. "I never got to thank you," he said quietly. "I tried to find you later, but they told me you were shipped out stateside after your injury. That the medic who patched me up was the same one who lost feeling below her waist a few weeks later." "That was a roadside blast," I said, my voice softer. "Different patrols, same dirt." He nodded, jaw tight. "So when I heard your voice in the ambulance today, making that same stupid joke about pride, it clicked," he said. "It just took a minute to untangle. Emotion rose in my chest, tangled with humiliation and relief and something that felt dangerously like comfort." "You believed me out there on the patio," I said, "when Cassidy said I fell on purpose." "I saw what she did," he answered, "and I know the difference between someone losing balance and someone getting shoved." Caleb saw it too. "Caleb," I said, "the photographer." Logan leaned back slightly. "He has already sent the full video to the police," he said. "He showed it to the first officer on scene before they even loaded you into the ambulance. Your sister cannot spin her way out of this one." The idea that there was proof, real proof, made my head swim. For once, the story would not be hers alone. A shadow appeared at the edge of the curtain, and a uniformed officer stepped inside, hat tucked under one arm, notepad in hand. He introduced himself as Officer Morales, his voice polite but firm. He said he would be back for a full statement once the doctor cleared me to talk longer, that there was already enough probable cause to open an assault case. When he left, Logan gave me a small nod. "You do not have to protect her," he said. "Not this time." Before I could answer, familiar voices rose in the hall. My mom's high-pitched worry, my dad's lower grumble, the sound of them arguing with someone at the nurse's station. A minute later, they swept through the curtain in a little storm of perfume and tension. "Oh, thank God," my mom said, clutching her purse to her chest when she saw me propped up slightly on the bed. "You look terrible." At least she was honest. My dad stood at the foot of the bed, his face drawn, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Logan started to rise, but my mom barely glanced at him. "We need a moment alone with our daughter," she said. Logan looked at me. I swallowed and nodded once. He stepped out, slipping past my parents, but stayed close enough in the hall that I could still see his shadow through the gap in the curtain. My mom pulled the visitor chair close, sitting so close her knee touched the side of the bed. She did not ask if I was in pain, She did not ask what the doctors had said. "Nora," she began, "we heard the police talking. They are treating this like a criminal thing." "Assault," my dad said flatly, "against a disabled person. They throw the book at people for that." "You saw what she did," I said, my voice raw. "She shoved my chair." My mom blinked and waved a hand, as if erasing a smudge. "She panicked," she insisted. "Things got out of hand. You know how she gets when she is stressed." "It was an accident that looked worse than it was." "There is a video," I said. "Caleb recorded everything. So did half the guests on their phones." Dad shifted his weight, eyes darting to the monitor, then back to me. "People will see what they want to see," he said. "What matters is what you tell the police. If you tell them it was a misunderstanding, they will downgrade the whole thing. No charges, no trial. We can handle this in the family." In the family, the same place where my injury had been quietly repackaged as something less inconvenient for years. I stared at them, feeling something cold and ancient uncoil in my chest. "You are not here to check if I am all right," I said. My mom flinched. "Of course we are," she said weakly. "But you are alive, thank God. And the doctor says no new damage. That is good news. Now we have to think about your sister." There it was, always the next line. "She is devastated," Mom went on. "People were filming. The vendors are furious about the cake. Her venue says this kind of scandal could affect their business. If the police press charges, she could lose her job, her reputation, maybe even face jail time. You have to talk to them, Nora. Tell them you do not want to pursue this. Tell them you slipped." I felt a hollow open inside me. "Tell them I slipped," I repeated. "You know how these things go," Dad said. "The state takes over. But your statement will carry a lot of weight. If you say you want leniency, if you admit you were upset and things got exaggerated, they will listen." My neck hurts. My back throbbed. There were still traces of frosting sticky in my hair. I glanced at my own legs under the blanket, still and distant. "You want me to lie?" I said. "We want you to protect your sister," Mom answered. "Family protects family. She did a terrible thing. But ruining her life will not fix your injury. It will just destroy what is left of all of us." A strange calm settled over me, like the quiet in my head when I used to slide into a triage zone. Priorities lined up. Triage did not mean you were heartless. It meant you finally saw what was bleeding and what was not. My voice came out soft but clear. "My injury is already ruined," I said. "I cannot walk. I cannot dance. I wake up most nights shaking from dreams you do not want to hear about. Today, your oldest daughter shoved your youngest into a $5,000 cake and onto a stone patio in front of 100 people, then called her a fake while she lay on the ground. And you came here to ask the one on the gurney to fix it." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "You are twisting things," she whispered. "You used to be so kind." "Maybe I finally stopped confusing kindness with obedience," I said. David's jaw clenched. "Think very carefully about what you are doing," he warned. "Once you involve lawyers and judges, there is no coming back. You will regret this when the dust settles." For the first time in my life, I believed that the only regret I would feel would come from staying silent. I looked him straight in the eye. "I am not withdrawing anything," I said. "I will tell the police exactly what happened. What Cassidy did, what you both saw. You can decide which side of that you want to be on." The room went very still. "You are choosing strangers over your own family," my mom said, voice shaking. "I am choosing myself," I answered. For once, she stared at me as if she did not recognize the person in the bed. Then she stood abruptly, knocking the chair back a little. My dad followed, his face a hard mask. "We will not watch this family be torn apart," he said. "It already is," I replied quietly. They left without another word, curtains swaying behind them. Their perfume lingered in the air long after their footsteps faded. I lay there, listening to the muffled sounds of the emergency department. A monitor beeped in the next bay. Someone laughed too loudly near the nurse's station. A cart squeaked past. A moment later, the curtain opened again and Logan stepped in, eyes searching my face. "Are you okay?" he asked. The easy, automatic answer rose to my lips and died there. I swallowed and tried again. "No," I said, but I think I might be closer to it than I have been in a long time. He nodded slowly, understanding flickering in his gaze. Out in the hallway, I caught a glimpse of Caleb talking quietly to Officer Morales, his phone in his hand, the tiny screen replaying my fall. Evidence. Proof. The story untwisted at last under harsh, honest light. Inside my chest, something old and brittle finally cracked. Not from impact this time, but from the strain of being held too long. For the first time since I came home from the war, I had drawn a line and refused to step back from it. I had no idea yet what it would cost me. But as I lay there under hospital lights instead of wedding lanterns, I knew one thing with a clarity that made my hands stop shaking. Whatever came next, it would not be built on my silence anymore. I found out pretty quickly that it also would not be quiet. By the next morning, the hospital room felt smaller, as if the walls had noticed my decision and were closing in to see what I would do with it. The television mounted in the corner was on mute, stuck on a local news channel someone had left playing overnight. A ticker crawled across the bottom of the screen, red and white. Urgent, even with the sound off. I was trying to decide whether to ask a nurse to turn it off when Dr. Ruth walked in carrying a tablet and a paper cup of coffee. "You look a little less like you were hit by a truck today," she said, setting the cup on the tray. "That's good," I asked. She smiled. "In this building, that counts as progress." She adjusted the head of my bed a little higher, then glanced at the television. The morning show anchors were smiling with that practiced blend of concern and curiosity. "You are about to see something," she said. "I want you to remember that you are allowed to look away if you need to." My stomach dipped. "That sounds promising," I said. She picked up the remote, turned the volume up a notch. The segment was already in progress. A still frame showed the patio at Low Country Oaks, the cake in the background, my wheelchair near the edge of the shot. A blurred oval covered my face. Cassidy's face was not blurred at all. The anchor's voice was smooth, practiced. "Viewers, we do want to warn you that what you are about to see may be disturbing. Witnesses say this incident occurred during a wedding reception yesterday afternoon outside Savannah." The video rolled. Even knowing what was coming, I felt my breath catch. The footage was from Caleb's camera, but cropped tighter. You saw Cassidy walking behind my chair, saw her hands grip the handles, saw the jerk of the shove. The camera shook when the cake fell, and the station cut the impact short, cutting away just before my body fully hit the ground. The audio was muted over with commentary. Reports say the woman in the wheelchair is a former Army medic and the bride's younger sister, the anchor said. Family members initially claimed the fall was an accident, but other guests have told police a different story. The shot cut to a reporter standing outside the hospital entrance. Behind her, the sliding doors hissed open and closed as staff and visitors moved in and out. I reached for the remote, hand shaking. "That is enough," I said. Dr. Ruth turned the volume back down, then off. "They blurred your face," she said, "but people who know you will recognize you anyway. The internet is already running with it." My throat felt dry as dust. "You mean people are watching that while they eat their cereal?" I said. She sat in the chair next to my bed. "People are watching," she said, "but they are also noticing. There is a difference." She unlocked her tablet and slid it toward me. "Here," she said. "Before you torture yourself with the comments section, let me show you the parts that matter." On the screen was a page from a veteran support group. Someone had shared the video with a caption that simply said that this was why. Some veterans stayed away from family gatherings, and that this was not how you treat someone who has already sacrificed enough. The comments under it stacked one after another. "Who pushes a woman in a wheelchair? She is a medic. She probably saved lives." My blood is boiling. "If this is your sister, I hope you never speak to her again." It felt surreal, seeing strangers defend a blurred figure on a screen who happened to be me. Then I saw another post, this one in a local neighborhood group. It was shorter, shot from a different angle, clearly from a phone near the bar. It started just as Cassidy shouted at me to get out and stop embarrassing her. The clip cut off right as my chair jerked, before the cake toppled. The caption under it said that the woman in the chair had thrown herself into the cake to ruin the wedding, that she always did things like this for attention. The username made my stomach turn. Marcy. I said. Of course it was Marcy. For a second, numbness spread through my chest. Then, like a tide pulling back, anger rushed in. How many times, I thought, had women like Marcy and my sister written their own version of a story because they knew no one would challenge them? How many times had I helped them by staying quiet? Dr. Ruth must have read some of that on my face. Keep scrolling, she said softly. Under Marcy's clip, replies had poured in. Did you not see the longer video? One person wrote. The photographer posted it. She was pushed. Another said, stop lying for your friend. It is all on tape. You should be ashamed. Someone else simply linked Caleb's full video. The contrast between the truth and her edit, brutal and obvious. My hand loosened around the tablet. So they are not buying it, I said. Enough of them are not, Dr. Ruth replied. The narrative is not entirely in your sister's control anymore. I laid my head back against the pillow, staring at the ceiling. It feels strange, I said, having people angry on my behalf. She tilted her head, studying me. Strange good or strange bad? Both, I said. I am used to being the one defending her. She nodded slowly. Which brings us to the next wave, she said. Your parents were at the nurse's station again this morning. The staff sent them away until your pain meds were adjusted, but they will be back. I closed my eyes briefly. They want me to save her, I said. They always have, she answered. A beat of silence passed between us. What if I do not? I asked. The words came out small, but they did not tremble the way they would have a year ago. Then you will finally be saving yourself, she said. The simplicity of it hit hard. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Nora, you have carried a lot, she said. Combat trauma, physical loss, and on top of that, a family system that taught you your worth depended on how much you could absorb for everyone else. This is another battlefield. The tactics are different, but the goal is the same. Staying alive as yourself. I stared at my hands, fingers curling slightly. It feels selfish, I admitted. She shook her head. It feels unfamiliar, she corrected. There is a difference. Later that afternoon, a nurse came in to check my vitals and mentioned, almost casually, that a reporter had tried to get onto the floor for an interview. The hospital had turned her away, citing privacy policies. 10 minutes after that, my phone buzzed with a number I did not recognize. I almost ignored it. Then I remembered the way everyone else had been telling my story for me, so I answered. A woman's voice came on the line, professional but gentle. Miss Callahan, my name is Jenna. I'm with a local station. I know you have every reason not to trust the media right now. I just wanted to say that if you ever do decide you want your own words out, I would be honored to listen. No pressure, no rush. Her restraint impressed me more than any pitch would have. I told her I was not ready to speak on camera, that my head still felt like it had been through a blender. She understood, gave me her email, and said she would not contact me again unless I reached out. When I hung up, I realized my hands were not shaking. That night, the dreams were loud. Sand under my boots, the whine of incoming fire, Cassidy's voice bleeding into the shouting, telling me to get out, to stop embarrassing her, to stand up if I wanted badly enough. I jolted awake to the soft beep of the monitor and the dim glow from the deep hallway. My heart was running in circles. I pressed my palms to my thighs, feeling nothing beneath them and everything at once above. A moment later, the curtain rustled, and Dr. Ruth slipped in, as if she had been pacing the corridor waiting. Nightmare? She asked. I nodded. She pulled the chair close. Tell me the loudest part, she said. I told her about the overlapping orders, the ones to save people under fire, and the ones to save my sister's image at any cost. How my body tried to obey both, and tore something in the process. She listened, then said quietly that sometimes the bravest thing a soldier could do was stand down from a mission that would get them killed for no tactical gain. You are allowed to choose which orders you follow now, she said. The next day, the JAG officer arrived. Mason Harrington, mid-30s, clean haircut, calm eyes. He sat beside my bed with a small recorder and a notepad, explaining in plain language what an assault case involving a disabled veteran could look like. He did not rush me. He did not make me repeat the insult Cassidy had thrown at me in front of everyone. When I faltered, he paused and let me regroup. At the end, he said that with the video evidence and witness statements, the state would almost certainly proceed, whether I wanted to or not. Your input does matter, though, he added. When it comes to sentencing, to whether the prosecutor would consider a plea, your wishes carry weight. You should not be pressured either way. Too late, I thought, but I only said, "Thank you." After he left, my parents tried again. They did not bother with small talk this time. My mom's mascara was smudged, not from tears, but from rubbing at her eyes. My dad looked older than he had at the wedding, shoulders sagging under an invisible load. "Lawyers are already calling us," he said, standing rigid at the foot of my bed. "Reporters, too. Do you understand what this is doing to our family name?" For a moment, I wanted to laugh. Our family name, as if I had not watched it being used like a shield for Cassidy and a weight for me. "This is not about your name," I said. "This is about what she did." Mom stepped closer, gripping the rail. "If you tell them you want mercy," she said, voice low and urgent, "they will listen. You could save her from a record, from jail. You could keep her life from being ruined." My gaze went to my motionless legs under the blanket. "My life is already altered," I said. "Breaking consequences for her will not restore anything for me." They stared at me like they were looking at a stranger. Finally, Mom whispered, "The war changed you." "Maybe," I answered. "Or maybe it just made it harder for me to pretend." They left soon after, frustration and disbelief trailing behind them like perfume. When the curtain closed, Logan stepped in almost immediately, as if he had been waiting for them to clear the doorway. "You holding up?" he asked. "It depends on the hour," I said. He let out a breath that might have been a laugh if the day had been lighter. "Welcome to my favorite answer," he said. "One day at a time, one crisis at a time." He pulled the chair over and sat, watching me for a moment. "So," he said, changing the energy a little, "can I ask you something that is not about your sister or the police?" That sounded like a small miracle. "Please," I said. "You remember I mentioned my company?" He went on. "Valor Works?" I nodded. I had seen the name in an article once, in a waiting room at the VA. Something about local veterans helping other veterans back into civilian life. "We have peer coordinators," he said. "Veterans who have been through physical and psychological recovery, who sit with new arrivals, help them navigate the system, lead small groups, that kind of thing. No fixing. Just walking alongside." I tilted my head slightly on the pillow. "You think I could be one of those?" I asked. "I think you already are," he said. "You just do it unofficially. The way you talk about your injury, the way you chose to stand your ground after what happened at that wedding, even how you are handling your parents right now. Other vets will recognize that. It could matter more than you know." A tiny spark of something warm flickered in my chest. "You understand I am sitting in a hospital bed covered in old cake bruises," I said. "You are also someone who dragged herself through trauma twice and still found the courage to say no to the people who raised her," he answered. "That counts." I let my eyes fall closed for a second, imagining a different kind of room. Not a hospital bay, not a wedding venue, but a space filled with people who understood the cost of waking up every day, in a body that did not match the one you remembered. A place where I was not the problem to be managed, but part of the solution. "I do not know if I am ready," I said honestly. He nodded. "That is fair," he said. "When you are discharged, come by. No obligation. Just look around. If all you do is drink bad coffee and laugh at our motivational posters, I will still call it a win." Despite everything, I smiled. "We will see," I said. As he left, I caught my reflection in the dark corner of the television. Hair a mess, bruises faintly yellowing along my jaw, hospital gown hanging loose. Not the image of a heroine, not the neat version of a wounded sister my family preferred. Just a woman in between. Outside the hospital walls, people I would never meet were arguing in comment sections about veterans and disability and what counted as real suffering. Some were defending me, some were not. Marcy's little narrative had already been swallowed up by the larger story. Her cut-and-paste version exposed alongside the raw footage. Inside, between beeping monitors and thin curtains, the real war was slower and quieter. It was the war of choosing, over and over, not to vanish when it would have been easier. The real war was slower and quieter, but it was not over, and I felt that truth settle in my chest as the morning of the hearing arrived. The courthouse in Chatham County smelled faintly of old wood and strong coffee, the way government buildings often do. Logan had offered to drive me, and I let him. It was easier than wheeling myself down sidewalks that were never quite level and never quite kind. The sky was overcast, pale gray, the kind of light that makes everything look honest, whether it wants to be or not. When he helped me out of the truck and settled my chair on the pavement, I could feel how steady he was. Steadier than I felt inside. "You ready?" he asked quietly. "No," I said, "but I am here." He nodded, as if that was enough. Inside, a deputy guided us to the small courtroom where Judge Dalton presided. The walls were lined with framed portraits of past judges, all stiff smiles and dark robes. A few reporters sat in the back, notebooks open. I saw Caleb slip in and take a seat near the aisle, camera bag at his feet. He caught my eye briefly, gave a respectful nod, then looked straight ahead. Then I saw my parents. My mom was seated beside Cassidy at the respondents' table, her hand wrapped around Cassidy's wrist like she was trying to anchor her. My dad sat on the other side, jaw tight, eyes flicking toward me and away again, as if looking too long might crack the surface of his conviction. Cassidy looked pale beneath the makeup, but her chin was lifted. She did not look at me. A bailiff called the room to order just as I wheeled into the space reserved for victims and witnesses. Logan stayed a step behind me, hands in his pockets, shoulders square. Judge Dalton reviewed the documents with calm efficiency. He was an older man with soft white hair and a gaze that cut through pretense, like it was paper. We began with witness statements. Officer Harrington, the JAG investigator, spoke first. He described the footage, the interviews, the consistency of the accounts given by those who saw the shove. He spoke of my service, my disability rating, the vulnerability of someone with spinal injury in a fall like that. Cassidy's attorney interrupted often, objecting, questioning phrasing, asking if perhaps the witnesses misinterpreted the angle of movement. The judge allowed some of it, dismissed more. Next, Caleb took the stand. He explained why he recorded what he recorded, why he turned over the unedited footage, how quickly lies had begun circulating online. "He is a photographer," the attorney said pointedly. "He profits from drama, does he not?" "No, sir," Caleb replied. "I profit from telling the truth, and that is what the video shows." When it was my turn, I felt something inside me tighten, but not collapse. My wheels whispered softly as I rolled forward. I raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth, and settled my palms in my lap. The attorney approached, a stack of papers under his arm. "Ms. Callahan," he began, "you have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder since your deployment." "Correct. Yes. And PTSD can sometimes cause misinterpretation of events." Logan shifted behind me, but I stayed still. "So can audio recordings," I said. A flicker passed over the attorney's face. He recovered quickly. "Is it possible you misremembered the shove?" I met his eyes. I remember hands on my chair. I remember the force. And I remember the fall. That is not PTSD. That is gravity. A quiet murmur rippled through the room. Cassidy shifted in her seat and finally spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She is lying. She has always lied. She wants attention." She threw herself forward. "She knows how to make the chair tip. She has done it before to get sympathy." Judge Dalton held up a hand, silencing her. "Ms. Callahan," he said, his voice firm, "you will speak only when addressed." Cassidy sank back, face blotched with frustration. Then she tried again, softer, aiming it at my parents. "I did not mean to hurt her. She knows I would never. She is making this worse than it has to be." My mom squeezed her hand, nodding desperately. "See, honey?" she whispered toward the judge. "It was a misunderstanding, a terrible misunderstanding." My breath stilled in my throat. Judge Dalton leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Let us address the evidence," he said calmly. "We have a clear video showing you moving behind your sister's wheelchair. We have the angle of your arms, the forward momentum of the chair, and the resulting injuries." Cassidy's voice cracked. "But she ruins everything. She always has. She tried to take my day, My dad stood abruptly. "Your Honor," he said, "our family has been through a lot. The media is twisting this. My daughter is being crucified for a mistake." Judge Dalton's gaze fixed on him. "Sir, your elder daughter's choices are what brought her here. The only victim in this case is the woman who sits before me now." The words hit harder than I expected. The judge continued, "Given the video evidence, the consistent witness statements, and the severity of the act, I find Cassidy Callahan guilty of assault against a disabled veteran." My mom gasped. My dad swore under his breath. Cassidy's face was drained of color. "This court takes assaults on disabled individuals with utmost seriousness," the judge said, "particularly when the victim is physically vulnerable. Appropriate sentencing will reflect that." I exhaled slowly. My hands trembled, but not from fear this time. When the gavel fell, the sound echoed through my ribs. Afterward, the hallway outside the courtroom felt colder than the room we had left. My parents approached me, their faces tight with disbelief. "Are you satisfied now?" my mom said. "You have destroyed your sister." I looked at them, feeling a strange calm wash over me. "I did not destroy her," I said. "She made a choice, and for the first time, I chose myself." My dad's mouth opened as if to argue, but I turned away before he could. Logan stepped forward without a word and wheeled me toward a quieter corner of the hallway. He waited until the murmurs faded and the doors stopped swinging. "You did well there," he said. I felt more exhausted than triumphant. "I did what I had to," I replied. He nodded. "And now, maybe, you can start doing what you want to." I let his words settle before answering. "I do not know what that is yet." He leaned one shoulder against the wall, arms folded. "You know you can visit Valor Works anytime. The offer still stands. We need people who understand what it is like to come home changed. Someone who can tell the truth when it is hard." I looked down at my motionless legs, then at my hands resting in my lap. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe I can do that." Just then, a man with a metal prosthetic below his left knee approached us. Early 40s, weathered face, steady eyes. "Are you Nora?" he asked. I nodded. He stuck out a hand, his grip warm and firm. "My name is Aiden Brooks." I watched the hearing online. "I wanted to tell you something." I waited, unsure what was coming. "You standing up like that," he said, "makes it easier for the rest of us, too. People think we are fragile, or liars, or burdens, but you did not let them rewrite what happened to you. That matters." His voice caught the slightest crack. "It matters more than you think." Emotion rose so fast it burned behind my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded once, then walked away with a steady, even gait, the click of his prosthetic soft against the floor. Logan watched him go, then looked down at me again. "You help people just by being who you are," he said. "Imagine what you could do if you chose it on purpose." I let out a shaky breath. The courthouse doors swung open, letting in a gust of cool air. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the world outside held room for me again, not as a burden or a problem or a shadow next to my sister's drama, but as someone who still had choices left, someone I was only beginning to know. I rolled out of the courthouse 6 months ago feeling hollowed out, scraped clean in a way I could not quite understand. I thought that would be the hardest day of my life after Afghanistan. I was wrong. It was only the day everything stopped pretending. The real rebuilding came after. 6 months later, on a warm morning in early October, I rolled through the double glass doors of Valor Works Rehabilitation with a cup of coffee balanced between my knees and a clipboard tucked under my arm. The lobby smelled faintly of pine cleaner and something comforting. Like old books, the walls were lined with framed photos of veterans completing physical therapy milestones, smiling with braces on their arms, prosthetics gleaming, chairs polished from use, real victories, real people. My badge hung around my neck. Nora Callahan, Peer Support Coordinator. I still paused sometimes when I read it. 6 months ago, I could not even picture myself in a place like this, guiding anyone. Now it felt like a place my bones recognized. In the morning, Nora, Walt called from the reception desk. He was in his 60s, Navy retired, always chewing on peppermint gum like it was a personal mission. "Morning," I said, maneuvering past him toward the therapy wing. "You are ready for the group today." He patted his stack of appointment sheets, ready as any man can be when 4 Marines and a Coast Guard rescue diver all want the same time slot. Go easy on them. I smiled, because Walt said the same thing every week. And every week, the group turned into exactly what it needed to be. Some days are quiet. Some days are raw. Some days loud enough that people walking by probably assumed we were arguing, when we were really just trying not to cry. The group started at 9. I rolled into the circle of chairs, checked the whiteboard, then glanced at the clock. Aiden Brooks was already there, adjusting the height on his prosthetic with the little tool he always kept in his pocket. He looked up when he heard me. "Hey, Doc," he joked, even though I reminded him weekly that I was not a doctor. "Hey yourself," I said. "How is the knee today?" He tapped it once. Sore as sin. But I beat my son in basketball yesterday, so it was worth it. I laughed and set the clipboard on my lap. A few more veterans trickled in, a young woman with burns along her jawline, a man in his 70s with tremors in his left hand, a quiet medic who reminded me a little too much of myself in the early months after I came home. We talked about sleep first, then anger, then the strange guilt that creeps in on the days you feel almost normal. I listened more than I spoke, letting them pull threads loose at their own pace. I shared when it made sense. I held silence when words would only crowd the space. At the end, Aiden stayed behind, pretending to tie his shoe, even though it was a slip-on. "You all right?" I asked him. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Better than I was 6 months ago." "You know that already." He hesitated, then added, "You ever think about how different things would be if you had not told the truth that day?" I thought of the courtroom, the judge's voice, Cassidy's disbelief, my parents' disappointment, the sharp crack of something old breaking and something new finally waking up. "Every day," I said, and I am still glad I did. He nodded once, satisfied. By noon, I was in Logan's office going over next month's program schedule. He had a habit of organizing his desk and then immediately cluttering it again, with coffee cups and sticky notes. Today was no exception. "You are building a solid team," he said, flipping through the attendance reports. "People respond to you." I shrugged a little. "They respond because they know I am not pretending. They can smell pretending from a mile away." He smiled, soft and tired in the way people look when they care deeply about something that costs them sleep. "You look steadier these days," he said. "I am," I answered, "mostly because this place lets me be useful without performing." He leaned back in his chair. "And how is home?" That word still stung sometimes. "Calmer," I said. "Quieter. My parents do not call much, and that used to hurt. Now it just feels like space." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes space is the only way people show you who they were all along." I exhaled. It was not bitter, just truth settling into the shape of acceptance. He closed the folder in front of him. "For what it is worth," he said, "you have built more in 6 months than some people manage in a lifetime." I looked at him then, really looked, and felt the old ache of gratitude warm something in my chest. "We are both still standing in our own ways," I said. "We are," he replied. We did not talk about Cassidy, or the trial, or the cake. We did not need to. Life has moved on in the quiet, determined way life sometimes does when you stop trying to drag the wrong people with you. By late afternoon, I was outside near the therapy garden, breathing in the scent of basil and warm soil while the sun slipped behind the trees. The wheelchair hummed slightly as I shifted position, feeling the usual tug in my lower back, but not fighting it. For the first time in years, I felt like my body and my life belonged to me again. I closed my eyes and let the warmth soak into my skin. The breeze carried laughter from the open windows. Someone inside was arguing about football. Someone else was humming. Life. Ordinary, beautiful life. 6 months ago, I thought the fall had shattered everything. But standing here now, in the middle of a garden built for people learning to live again, I understood something crucial. Nothing important had broken. The only things that fell that day were illusions. I touched the small ValorWorks badge at my chest, tracing the raised lettering with my thumb. I was not healed. Some days I still woke up with my heart racing. Some nights the memories dragged their claws through my sleep. But I was here, choosing, participating, breathing without holding everything inside. Healing was slow, but it was real, and I was no longer hiding. As the sun dipped lower, painting the garden gold, I whispered to myself, almost without meaning to. I did not lose anything, except what was never meant to stay. And I believed it. If you have ever been told you were too much, or not enough for your own family, remember this: silence can be power, and truth can be the loudest revenge. Tell me in the comments what integrity means to you and where you are listening from.